Hello everyone, it is Monday, January 31st at the time of this recording. My name is Jacob Toomey. This is brought to you by Blue Door Media, and today we are going to talk about meditation. The thing that everyone is talking about. I'm not sure if we completely understand. I know I didn't understand meditation until I actually started to meditate. Although if you would have asked me before I started to meditate if I understood it, my quick answer would be yes, of course. Now, there's different kinds of meditation. So let's begin by talking about these different kinds of meditation. I just pulled up an article written by Headspace here, and it talks about guided versus unguided meditation. It talks about calming versus insight meditation. It talks about the different types of meditation that they teach on their app. I kind of want to just go through these different kinds of meditations and give you my personal opinion on them, because maybe it can provide a little insight into what your definition of meditation becomes. Because for me personally, it's a forever evolving definition, because it's like trying to define energy. Like you can't really put your finger on it. And I believe meditation is in that same ballpark. One of my favorite metaphors actually comes from a meditation teacher that's had a huge impact on my personal life, Sam Harris, and he compares meditation to reading. Now, if someone were to ask you what the importance of reading is, the answer is so obvious that I don't even know where to begin. Like, if you can learn how to read, you can learn, period. Like, it unlocks everything. You can teach yourself things. You can learn through other people's stories. You can teleport yourself into someone else's experience and actually feel what that person was feeling when they wrote their story. And you do that by reading. And he compares meditation to reading based on how important it is. Because when we're able to meditate, when we're able to be completely present, it's the equivalent of being able to read what's happening around you. When you have focused, present concentration, attention, awareness, whatever term you want to use, that puts you in a calm, open state where you're not constantly defining everything you hear and judging everything you hear, and you're just letting things come and go, and you're kind of ebbing and flowing through life. Perhaps it's called that flow state. Whatever it is, when you're able to cultivate a meditative state, it's the equivalent of being able to read. Like your baseline of consciousness awareness is just raised. Like imagine if everything was in a different language. You wouldn't understand what's going on. Now imagine if you can't concentrate. You don't understand everything that's going on. That's the equivalent meditation is to reading. So after that little rant, let's go back to the different types of meditation. The first one that we're talking about here is focused attention meditation. And so they define it as a form of meditation that's fairly straightforward because it uses the object of our breath to focus attention, to anchor the mind, and maintain awareness. So basically, when you notice your mind starts to wander, you bring it back to your breath. And each time you do this, you are practicing a focused attention meditation. This is a really powerful practice, and this is one of the basics that most meditation teachers will teach, because this builds up your attention. This builds up your concentration. And when you have a higher level of attention and higher level of concentration, you're able to be present in the moment and not worry about everything that just happened in the past and not worry about all the things that could happen in the future. So focused attention meditation. Big fan of it. Let's get into the next one. The body scan. So often our body is doing one thing while our mind is elsewhere. This technique is designed to sync body and mind by performing a mental scan from the top of the head to the end of your toes. Imagine a photocopier lightly, slowly moving over your body, bringing attention to any discomfort, sensations, tensions, or aches that exist. And I'll take this one step further. When you're actually doing this body scan, which you can do right now while you're listening to this, inhale, bring the attention to your forehead, your temples, your jaw, and on the exhale, relax the tension. On the next inhale, bring your attention to your neck, your shoulders, and on your exhale, relax them. And you work your way down your body. And that's how you can do a body scan. Again, a different kind of meditation, equally as effective, just in a different area of your body. Another great technique. Let's go into noting next. So whether you are focusing on the breath or simply sitting quiet, this technique involves specifically noting what's distracting the mind to the extent that we are so caught up in a thought or emotion that we've lost our awareness of the breath or whatever the object of focus is. We note the thought or feeling to restore awareness, create a bit of space as a way of letting go, and to learn more about our thought patterns, tendencies, and conditionings. So how this is used in practice is you're sitting, you're practicing mindful awareness. Someone's outside the door and it sounds like they just got hurt. Anyways, you notice a thought like that just pop into your head, and you just say, thinking, and you bring yourself back to what's ever happening. So that's how you can note. So if your mind's going crazy, then all of a sudden you're thinking about what's happening here, and then your mind starts to go crazy again, you can just say, thinking, I did it again, and you just bring yourself back. So that's noting. So the next meditation technique, visualization. This is powerful. Now, this type of meditation invites you to picture something or someone in your mind. We are essentially replacing the breath with a mental image as the object of focus. So basically, visualization is closing your eyes, looking into the darkness behind your eyelids. And here's one example of visualization. Now imagine someone you absolutely love. Imagine them smiling, imagine them happy. And imagine that they are smiling at you, wishing you to be happy. Now, if you're able to visualize this in your mind's eye, you can actually cultivate feelings of happiness for yourself. That's an example of a visualization exercise. Another example of a visualization exercise, people use this often when they're training. So one of my best friends jumps out of planes, and he has the perfect example of how he preps before he jumps out of a plane. Because you only get one shot to jump out of a plane, and when you get good at things, you need to repeat it over and over again, which means you need to practice that one shot over and over again before you actually get on the plane. Otherwise, it could be, deadly. And so what he does is he puts on all of his gear, and he closes his eyes, and he visualizes that he's on the plane, And he doesn't even have to put on his gear, but he visualizes where his gear is. And he checks everything. He takes the necessary steps. He visualizes he's on a plane, and then he makes the jump. And so when he actually gets on the plane, because he's visualized it so many times over and over again, he's prepared. Now, the way this works with our feelings is when we visualize feeling happy, maybe something beautiful in nature that makes us happy, or whatever it is. When we can visualize, and now this takes practice to visualize. The more we practice visualization, the better we get at it. So if you're not good at it now, that's okay. Some people are naturally inclined to visualize things. They've been visualizing things their entire life. Some people haven't done it in a while, so they need to get started again, but we're all capable of doing it. Okay? And when we're able to visualize feelings of happiness and joy, we actually start to feel feelings of happiness and joy. And that's how we know this is working. So visualization, another form of meditation. The next form of meditation they talk about here is loving kindness, which I basically just used the example for. Closing your eyes, visualizing someone you love. That's an example of a loving kindness meditation. Skillful compassion. This one's similar to the loving kindness meditation, and this one involves focusing on a person. Again, this is the same technique, just used a little bit differently. Basically, I already described this technique. Let's go to the next one. Resting awareness. Rather than focusing on the breath or visualization, this technique's involved letting the mind truly rest. So I would also call this a mindfulness awareness meditation. And so they call this resting awareness. It's just different wording, same concept here. You're letting the mind rest as thoughts enter, but instead of like pulling away, you just notice the thoughts just kind of drift away. That's resting awareness meditation. The next one is reflection. This technique invites you to ask yourself a question, perhaps something as, what are you most grateful for? Note that asking yourself a question using the second person, you, will discourage the intellectual mind from trying to answer it rationally. Be aware of the feelings. Note the thoughts that arise, not the thoughts that arise when you focus on the question. So basically, reflection here is just telling you to pay attention to your feelings. And the reason why you ask yourself what you're most grateful for, you want to try to cultivate that feeling of gratitude. Another good technique. All right, some other types of meditation here. Zen meditation. The ancient Buddhist tradition involves sitting upright and following the breath, particularly the way it moves in and out of the belly, and letting the mind just be. It aims to foster a sense of present and alertness. That's pretty straightforward and very well described. Mantra meditation. This technique is similar to focused attention meditation, although instead of focusing on the breath to quiet the mind, you focus on a mantra. So this sounds very similar to transcendental meditation, which I can see in the article they're about to talk about next. So I'll give you an example of a way that I've practiced a mantra meditation. My mind gets really loud. So one way that I practice a mantra meditation is if my mind's just super chatty today and it's thinking about everything, it's creating problems for me, it's doing this, it's doing that. Oftentimes, I'll say to myself in a really loving voice, everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. And I'll just say that to myself over and over and over and over again until I completely forget whatever it was that was stressing me out. And I'm just thinking like everything is going to be okay. And I actually find it silly at the end. So it brings me feelings of joy, feelings of happiness. And that's the way I do a mantra meditation, a very powerful technique. Now the next one, it goes into transcendental meditation, which looks like a giant advertisement here because transcendental meditation is a big business. So I'm not going to get into that one. It's very similar to mantra meditation. Yoga meditation. This is a loaded word because yoga is actually, original yoga is meditation from what I've learned from it. So let's see how it describes this. Just as there's many different types of meditation, so too exist many styles of yoga, particularly Kundalini yoga, that are aimed at strengthening the nervous system so we're better able to cope with everyday stress and problems. So, again, like yoga, meditation, it really depends on what definition you're going off of here. I stretch every morning and follow my breath. That could be a form of yoga meditation. Vipassana meditation. Another ancient tradition, this one invites you to use your concentration to intensely examine certain aspects of your existence with the intention of eventual transformation. Vipassana pushes us to find insight into the true nature of reality via contemplation of several key areas of human existence: suffering, unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, non-self, emptiness. So Vipassana meditation is similar to what Sam Harris teaches. It's basically mindfulness meditation, insight into the true nature of reality. So stripping away concepts and just being and sitting. Even if you're suffering, you're sitting in the suffering, which makes it okay. That might take a little while to stick. You might have to come back to that one. Chakra meditation. So this meditation technique is aimed at keeping the body's core chakras, center of energy, open, aligned, and fluid. Blocked or imbalanced chakras can result in uncomfortable physical and mental symptoms, but chakra meditation can help bring them all back into balance. So we have 8 different chakras. Basically, you're bringing attention to each area and relaxing and breathing energy into that area. That's a very simplified version of what chakra meditation means. Qigong meditation. This is an ancient and powerful Chinese practice that involves harnessing energy in the body by allowing energy pathways, called meridians, to be open and fluid. Sending this energy inward during meditation is thought to help the body heal and function. Sending the energy outward can help to heal another person. So although I've never practiced Qigong meditation personally, I do know some people who very regularly practice Qigong meditation. And to me, it sounds like they're combining the breath with visualization. Okay, it's all the same things here and just packaged differently. The next one is sound bath meditation. This form uses bowls, gongs, and other instruments to create sound vibrations that help focus the mind and bring it into a more relaxed state. A very powerful technique. One of my favorite artists that does their form of sound bath meditations is called LS Dream. He does live streams here on YouTube, and if you're into that stuff, definitely recommend checking that out. And so that's 16 different types of meditations here, according to the Headspace app. Now, I guess I'd just like to talk a little bit about what I think meditation is, because there's really supposed to be no difference between formal practice and informal practice, because the point of meditation is to not sit on a mat and meditate, okay? Just like the point of working out isn't to be working out. Now, I suppose people do make it about that, but they want to elevate their baseline level of strength as they go throughout the rest of the day. And so when we meditate, what we're doing is when we're practicing concentration meditation or focused attention meditation, like they call it here. We are practicing the concentration or the focus. And because we're doing that over and over again, we're actually building up our baseline of concentration or attention or focus or whatever you want to call it. So when we leave the practice, over time, when we repeat the practice, when we're no longer practicing, our overall level of concentration is just higher, which makes us better at everything. If you can concentrate better, you're better at everything you do. If you can pay better attention without being distracted, you are going to have a higher energy. You're going to have a higher presence. You are literally going to be more present. People can feel that shit. Like, people know when you're not in the room, when you're thinking about something else, but when you're there, people know when you're listening. Like, that's some powerful shit. And so my term of meditation is practicing all these different types of, different names of meditation, visualization, body scan. They all need to be practiced. Some people may benefit more from doing a body scan because they're so tight and they need to relieve stress and tension in their body. Some people may benefit more from a concentration exercise because they're so distracted. Some people can concentrate really well and they need to focus on more of a mindfulness awareness practice because, they say there's two types of attention. There's more than this, but let me just continue. There's spotlight attention where I'm just focused on one thing in the room and I don't see anything else that's happening around me. And then there's fog light attention, where I'm aware of everything that's happening here. We use our fog light attention like when we drive a vehicle. Like, everything is coming in. We can listen to a podcast and drive and see this guy coming from the back. That's our fog light, okay? Our spotlight is, we're in the passenger seat and we're looking at our phone. That's spotlight attention. It's just going right here. Fog light, see everything happening. And so we want to build up our fog light because the world is way more interesting when you can see more of it. If you can just see a little spotlight, you can miss a lot of things. A lot of times when you're angry, it's because your spotlight is focused on that thing that makes you angry. And you need to flick on the fog light and you need to see the rest of the world and all the other things going on and how the world's going to turn and how, you can help yourself, get over stress and anxiety just by zooming out and turning on that fog light and seeing all the other opportunities, seeing the big picture. And so that's meditation to me. Meditation is big picture. Meditation is like reading. It's so beneficial that you can't even define what it is exactly. And so I leave you with that. However you define meditation is okay with me. I personally don't care. I just recommend just getting started. And by listening to this through, you've already begun. And give yourself a little credit for that. So thank you for listening. Again, this is Monday, January 31st at the time of this recording. My name is Jacob Toomey. This is brought to you by Blue Door Media. Thank you.